As I stepped out of the cabin, the chill of the night air pricked my skin. The darkness was almost absolute, save for the soft glow of the moonlight that filtered through the dense canopy of trees above. I decided to take a walk, hoping the crisp mountain air would help clear my head. The woods were eerily silent, the only sound being the crunch of leaves under my feet. I walked deeper into the forest, the darkness enveloping me further. The towering trees seemed to close in on me, their branches forming a tangled web overhead that obscured the moonlight. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling in the bushes nearby. My heart skipped a beat as I strained my ears, trying to discern the source of the noise. It sounded again, closer this time. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the swaying branches and the shadowy trunks of trees. I convinced myself it was just a small animal, a squirrel or a rabbit, yet the unsettling feeling lingered. The woods felt different, alive with an energy that sent shivers down my spine. I shook off the sensation and continued my walk, deciding to head back soon. As I turned around, I noticed a tree that looked oddly out of place. Its trunk was twisted and gnarled, unlike any other tree in the forest. It seemed to be watching me, its knotted branches forming a grotesque face. I blinked, and it was just a tree again. But the image stayed with me, haunting the edges of my vision. The walk back to the cabin was a blur. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had seen and heard. The woods seemed to be changing, morphing into something sinister. I quickened my pace, the darkness closing in around me. Upon reaching the cabin, I rushed inside, locking the door behind me. My heart pounded in my chest as I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The woods had unnerved me, left me questioning my sanity. I decided then that I would leave at first light, unable to shake off the feeling of being watched. As I prepared for bed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. But instead of my own face, I saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me. I blinked, and it was gone, leaving me to question if it was ever there at all. I lay in bed, wide awake, the events of the night playing on an endless loop in my mind. The woods, the tree, the eyes, nothing made sense. As the hours ticked by, I realized that sleep was a distant dream. The cabin was no longer a sanctuary, but a prison, trapping me with my fears. The dawn could not come soon enough. As I waited for the first light to break through the darkness, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The woods were still out there, waiting, watching, and I was leaving. But part of me wondered if the woods would ever truly let me go. The first light of dawn finally began to seep through the cracks in the cabin walls, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and twist in the early morning gloom. I rose from my bed, every muscle aching with exhaustion, and began to pack my belongings. The events of the previous night had left me rattled, but the approaching daylight brought with it a sense of relief. As I stepped outside, the forest seemed different, the oppressive darkness replaced by a soft, ethereal light. The trees, once menacing, now stood tall and majestic against the backdrop of the rising sun. Yet, the memory of the glowing eyes in the mirror lingered, casting a shadow over my newfound sense of calm. I loaded my car and began to drive away, the gravel road crunching beneath my tires. The cabin quickly disappeared from view, swallowed by the dense foliage of the forest. I told myself I was leaving the woods behind, yet I couldn't shake off an inexplicable sense of unease. The drive back was long and monotonous, the endless stretch of road ahead mirroring the path my life was about to take. I decided to stop at a small diner, hoping for a hot cup of coffee and some human interaction to dispel the lingering eeriness of the woods. The diner was quaint, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and bacon. I took a seat by the window, my gaze automatically drawn to the dense forest that bordered the diner. As I sipped my coffee, I noticed something peculiar. The trees seemed to be moving, their branches swaying in an unnatural rhythm. I dismissed it as a trick of the light and focused on my surroundings. The other patrons seemed oblivious to my presence, engrossed in their own conversations. Yet, I couldn't help but feel like an outsider, a stranger in a world that had suddenly turned unfamiliar. As I prepared to leave, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the diner's mirror. But instead of my own face, I saw those glowing eyes staring back at me. This time, they didn't disappear. They just kept watching, their gaze following me as I walked out of the diner and into the waiting arms of the forest. The drive home was a blur, my hands gripping the steering wheel in a white-knuckled grip. The trees seemed to have multiplied, their gnarled branches reaching out towards me, begging for attention. I kept driving, my foot heavy on the accelerator, desperate to escape the clutches of the forest. As I finally pulled into my driveway, I felt a semblance of relief. The woods were behind me, their eerie charm replaced by the comforting familiarity of home. But as I turned off the engine, I heard it. A faint rustling, a whisper in the wind. I looked around, my heart pounding in my chest. There was nothing there, just the quiet suburban street and the distant hum of traffic. Yet, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, of eyes following me as I stumbled into my house, locking the door behind me. The days that followed were a blur, filled with sleepless nights and paranoid days. Every shadow became a threat, every sound a harbinger of doom. The woods had left an indelible mark on me, their haunting presence a constant reminder of my encounter. I began to question my sanity, wondering if the glowing eyes were just a figment of my imagination. But then, I would catch a glimpse of them in the most unexpected places, a reflection in a window, a shadow in the corner of my eye. They were always there, watching, waiting. And so, I find myself here, writing this account as a testament to my ordeal. The woods may be behind me, but their echo lingers, a haunting melody that plays on an endless loop in my mind. I don't know if I'll ever truly escape them, but I cling to the hope that one day I will find peace, free from the gaze of those glowing eyes. But for now, I wait, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in short gasps. The woods may be silent, but their presence is deafening, a constant reminder of the horror that lurks in the shadows. And as I close this account, I can't help but wonder, am I truly alone, or are the woods still here, watching, waiting for their chance to strike again? Part 3. The persistence of the unseen. Days turned into weeks, and my life became a delicate dance between reality and the shadows that haunted me. I tried to return to normalcy, to shake off the feeling of being watched, but it was relentless. The glowing eyes seemed to have seeped into every aspect of my life, a constant reminder of the horror that lurked in the corners of my mind. I began to research, to seek answers for the unexplainable. I scoured the depths of the internet, delving into the realms of the supernatural and the paranormal. But no matter how deep I ventured, I found no solace, no explanation that could satiate my curiosity or quell my fears. One night, as I lay in bed, my eyes caught a glimpse of movement in the darkness. I turned to face it, bracing myself for the sight of those glowing eyes. But instead I saw a figure, tall, thin, and enshrouded in shadows. It stood there watching me, its presence as palpable as the beating of my own heart. I tried to move, to scream, but my body refused to obey. The figure remained there, its gaze unwavering, until it slowly began to fade into the darkness. I lay there, trembling, my mind racing with questions and fears. Who was this figure? Why was it watching me? And most importantly, how could I make it go away? The following days were a blur of fear and paranoia. I found myself looking over my shoulder, jumping at every creak and whisper. The world around me seemed to have transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and fears, each corner hiding a new terror. I decided to confront the figure, to demand answers and closure. I sat up late into the night, my eyes fixed on the spot where it had appeared. Hours passed, but the figure did not return. Instead, I was left with an eerie silence, a void that seemed to swallow all sound and light. And then, Just as I was about to give up, I saw them again, the glowing eyes. They were different this time, brighter, more intense. They seemed to pierce through the darkness, their gaze filled with a strange sense of knowing. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. It was as if the eyes had me under a spell, compelling me to stare into their depths. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness. The following days were a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. I found myself drawn to the woods, to the source of my terror. I knew it was madness, yet I couldn't help myself. The woods seemed to call out to me, their whispers growing louder with each passing day. And so, one chilly evening, I found myself standing at the edge of the forest, my heart pounding in my chest. The trees loomed above me, their branches swaying gently in the wind. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I ventured deeper into the woods, my footsteps echoing through the darkness. The glowing eyes appeared again, guiding me through the labyrinth of trees. I followed them, my fear replaced by a strange sense of curiosity and wonder. As I walked, the woods seemed to change around me. The twisted trees gave way to straight trunks, the underbrush disappearing altogether. The air grew warmer, suffused with an ethereal glow. And then, just as suddenly as it began, my journey came to an end. I found myself standing in a clearing, the glowing eyes watching me from the tree line. In the center of the clearing stood a tree, unlike any I had ever seen. Its trunk was twisted and gnarled, its branches reaching out towards me, beckoning me closer. I approached the tree, my heart pounding in my chest. As I drew near, I noticed something peculiar. Etched into the bark were symbols and runes, their meanings shrouded in mystery. I traced my fingers over the symbols, their chill seeping into my bones. The glowing eyes appeared again, their gaze filled with a strange sense of understanding. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished, leaving me alone with the tree. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing with questions and fears. The woods had offered me a glimpse into their world, a secret hidden deep within their depths. But what did it mean? And more importantly, what would become of me now that I knew? As I turned to leave, I caught one last glimpse of the glowing eyes. They seemed to be smiling, their gaze filled with a strange sense of peace. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness. I left the woods that night, my mind filled with a newfound sense of wonder and fear. The glowing eyes had offered me a glimpse into their world, a secret hidden deep within the shadows. But what did it mean? And more importantly, would I ever truly escape the horror that lurked in the corners of my mind? As I sit here, typing these words, I can't help but wonder. The woods may be behind me, but their echo lingers, a haunting melody that plays on an endless loop in my mind. And as I close this account, I can't help but ask, what truly lies in the depths of the woods? And more importantly, will we ever truly escape the horror that lurks within?